Good evening, one and all. Welcoming you all who are present here in another academic chapter of Friday Pearls of Wisdom. Hope all are safe and sound in this tough situation of COVID. And the second wave is there, so we have to take the utmost care about the things. Being the guardian of our society, your well health, all the doctors, your well health is of utmost importance. Today, we have another exciting topic just after Women's Day, and the topic is the art and science of a woman's mind. I was just, whenever these exciting topics comes to my mind, as per the learning from my initial days, management days, they all say that try to visualize that subject. So when I try to visualize that subject, I don't know why, two character comes to my mind. One is Amrita Shergill, one of the famous painter. Maybe I have been brought up in West Bengal and having some art and craft characteristic. So Amrita Shergill was really a person who can personify these art and science. She was tremendous in the geometric pattern of her paintings, and painting is obviously trademark. And another person, definitely J.K. Rowling, the originator of the Harry Potter. She was also a mix of the art and science into the world, and really created a mark in the world. So Women's Day, a real homage to the Women's Day, first woman of our life, mother. So we are sitting among all of the people, the mother, sister, friends, and everybody. They are the creator of the world. So once again, starting the program with the homage and not taking much of the time, I will just hand over my sessions to the dynamic coordinators of this program. First of all, I will introduce Dr. Swati Joshi, madam. Madam is MBBS, DPM, and MD in psychiatry, and the recipient of the awards as ex-associate professor at MIMER Medical College. Madam is profoundly experiences several of the academic sphere. There is lecturer at the PG Medical College and the different of his personal clinics, and also associate professor at MIMER Medical College. Madam is the member of Indian Medical Association, Pune Psychiatry Association, Indian Psychiatric Society, as well as Indian Association of Private Psychiatrists. Welcome, Swati Joshi, madam. And our another one, our dynamic coordinator is Dr. Poonam Patil. Madam is MBBS DPM in psychiatry and faculty at Schizophrenia Awareness Association. Madam has done her DPM in KEM College. So definitely, madam is the student of Shubhangi madam. And madam is a member of Indian Medical Association, Maharashtra Medical Council, and Indian Psychiatric Society, and having a profound experience in the field of psychiatry. So with that introduction, I will hand over the session to Dr. Swati Joshi, madam. Madam, over to you.
Thank you, Anirban. Good evening, all of you. On behalf of Pune Psychiatric Society and Indian Psychiatric Society Pune branch, I welcome you all for today's Friday Pearl of Wisdom program. Today's topic is Art and Science of Woman's Mind by our eminent psychiatrist Dr. Shubhangi Parkar madam. Today for this program we have two dynamic ladies from our association who will moderate today's session. Dr. Madhumita Bahale and Dr. Jyoti Shetty. Dr. Madhumita Bahale, who had done her MBBS and DPM from BJMC Pune. Since last 33 years, she is working in the Maharashtra State Health Department at Regional Mental Hospital Pune. She is a resource person and trainer for medical officer and healthcare workers for various projects of Maharashtra government for mental health awareness and counseling, like Samartha for COVID patient and healthcare worker, Manasthairya for the flood affected people of Sangli and Kolhapur district, and Prerana project for retaining mental health and reaching suicide and preventing the suicide by farmers. Today's our second moderator is my friend and colleague Dr. Jyoti Shetty. She has done her MBBS and MD from BJMC Pune. Currently, she is working as a professor and head of the department at Department of Psychiatry, Bharati Vidyapeeth, Deem University and Medical College and Bharati Hospital, Pune. She had published 21, she had a 21 publication on her credit. She is a member of Institutional Ethics Committee and Mental Unit at Bharati Vidyapeeth, Deem University and Medical College. She was convener of the Child Psychiatry Subcommittee of IPS during 2015-16 and Forensic Psychiatry and Law Specialty Subcommittee IPS 2019 and 2021. She was president of the IPS Pune branch from 2016 to 17, and she is president-elect of Pune Psychiatric Society at this moment. She has elected as a co-chairperson Perinatal Psychiatry Task Force by Indian Psychiatric Society for the year 2021-22. So with this introduction, I hand over mic to our moderator, Dr. Madhumita Bahale and Dr. Jyoti Shetty.
Hello, everyone, and special greetings to all women, wishing them a wonderful, outstanding, marvelous, elite, and numero uno evening, just as they all are. Dear friends, this is going to be an exciting and powerful moment and a special program because all the special creations of the Almighty are connected together at this moment. I am sure a divine energy is also flowing through. On behalf of the Pune Psychiatric Association, being its president, and IPS Pune, I welcome you all to this program, the celebration of being women. How much ever one denies, every being in this world has experienced the uniqueness, the specialness, the extra somethingness in a situation when a woman is around. Mundane things turn bright, and the magic is such that joy finds its way with a woman's touch. Is it really so? You want to shout, yes, I know, but is it really so? Does the existence of a woman, the mere presence of a woman, really alter life experiences? If yes, why? Do men and women really think differently? Are their abilities of perception, cognition, understanding, analyzing, and managing the solutions really different? Are women actually created different? 200 years back, the famous William Wordsworth penned perfect lines in his poem, A Perfect Woman. He says first that she was a phantom of light when first she gleamed upon my sight. And then I saw her upon nearer view, a spirit, yet a woman too, her household motions light and free, and steps of virgin liberty. Later in the poem, he mentions, now I see with eye serene, the very pulse of the machine, the reason firm, the temperate will, endurance, foresight, strength, and skill. A perfect woman nobly planned, to warn, to comfort, and to command. Yet a spirit, still and bright, with something of angelic light. Well, friends, the way a woman perceives, analyzes, executes is perhaps the science of a woman's mind, but the way she integrates experience, understanding, the need of the situation, and then skillfully delivers is perhaps the art of the woman's mind. Today, we are going to know interesting and exciting facets of a woman's mind from a very renowned and very respected senior psychiatrist from Mumbai, Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, Madam. Madam is going to explain vividly how the woman's mind actually functions in various situations. There will be a bonanza of clips from movies and songs, and she is going to quote some poems also, and I'm sure she will also quote some share for the sharees who are attending this webinar. My loving request to all men, though, that please hang on. The ground is safe for them too. May I have the honor to now introduce Professor Shubhangi Parkar, Madam. Madam's list of introduction is very, very big. She is the senior most psychiatrist in Mumbai, the ex-HOD and Dean of KEM Hospital and SGS MC Mumbai. She has received many awards. She is international PhD from Switzerland on suicide and mental health problems. She has been an examiner and trainer for many doctors and many students. She has contributed as psychiatrist in critical situations which arose in Mumbai, the riots of 1992, the bomb blast in 1993 and 2006. She also went to Gujarat for mental health intervention when there was a major earthquake there. She has been working with women organization to empower women in crisis as member and committee on the Committee of Sexual Harassment of Bombay Municipal Corporation for more than 12 years. She was the ex-president of Bombay Psychiatric Society and the Indian Psychiatric Society Western Zonal Branch. She has received many, many awards, amongst them the main National Marfashia A.V. Shah Award and the Zonal Awards for Pioneering Research. Selected as young scientist at national level, and she has participated many national workshops for young mental health professionals organized by the WHO. She has delivered 500 scientific presentations in national and international conferences with 108 research publications and many social organizations, and has appeared on many TV programs also. She has received Savitribai Phule Puraskar, the Navashakti Sanman Puraskar, the Suvarna Kanya Puraskar, the Punya Nagari Puraskar, along with the Women Impact Award. Who else could be our better speaker today than Madam? She is an established Marathi writer and has published many articles in newspapers along with 2 books to her credit. She started the mental health helpline with Goose in Mumbai, and which deals with mental health and stress related programs. I would like to mention that Madam has received all IPS awards, Women Achievement Awards by Navashakti and Punya Nagari. She has been the Dean and Academic Dean of Medical Educationists, received most of the awards of Indian Psychiatric Society. A different angle about Madam is that she is a spiritual oriented person. She started her first mental health line, but she's also trained in yoga and pranayam formally and taken a long course on Bhagavad Gita. She has completed a Vipassana course and served on the research council also. So it is a great honor to have the opportunity to introduce such a big personality as Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, Madam. And I would like to express my gratitude that she has accepted the invitation of Pune Psychiatric Association and is here with us to tell us on different aspects of a woman's mind. Thank you very much, Madam. And I now invite our main speaker, Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, Madam, to please start her deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very nice to talk to Pune people. So many of my students are there in Pune. And of course, it's a nice traveling there. One feel warm. I'll start this presentation with a poem. Shall I start now? Yeah. Yes. Can you see now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We can
okay.
see.
I will start with a nice poem I came across during this season while going for some programs. Okay. Again? Okay. Share.
Yes, now it's everybody can.
English, make it full screen.
Okay, right.
Yeah, perfect.
औरतें अजीब होती है. This is a nice poem by somebody called Josna Mishra. औरतें अजीब होती है, लोग सच कहते हैं, औरतें अजीब होती है. रात भर सोती नहीं पूरा, थोड़ा थोड़ा जागती रहती है. नींद की स्याही में उंगलियां डुबो के दिन की बही लिखती है. नींद की स्याही में उंगलियां डुबो के दिन की बही लिखती है. टटोलती रहती है दरवाजे की कुंडियां, बच्चों की चादर, पति का मन, और जब जगाती सुबह तो पूरा नहीं जागती. You know, she doesn't sleep completely, she doesn't get up completely. नींद में ही भागती है, हवा की तरह घूमती है घर के बाहर. So this is what a very important perspective about women, which is written by a woman. Okay, well, woman is enigma because women's minds are much more complex, difficult to comprehend how women think and feel. This is always a trouble. She embraces several different natures in her personality. You know, at a time there are so many characteristics, so many attributes. Okay, what makes women so unfathomable to man is that they can dive in a split second from one level of their personality to the other. That means she's charming lady with whom men are flirting, we suddenly shaped into a sharp-tongued businesswoman or professional, only to react like a helpless college girl at a times. And then she is giving such a good advice and lecture as a grandmother. So woman is, you know, made up of multiple facets, and at a given time they can be displayed. The global questions when we think about women, you know, just thinking about women, is are men better at math? These are the different aspects which I came across. Are women better at language? What is the reason that fewer women than men work as a scientist, you know, and engineers? Now, this is a very, very important thing. Why women are into so many questions which keep coming. There is a vulnerability in women. Of course, this is a scientific vulnerability. I am not talking about the capacity. The causes can be biological, social, economic, sexual, cultural, political. I mean, we see political also of late. All of us are really watching so many things and so much aggression in the politics, you know. So we see the women's are at the helm of affair in the whole thing. Okay, so when we think about women, we have to really think about gender. We really cannot do without thinking about this gender perspective. So what is gender? It is defined as a socially constructed norms and ideologies which determine the behavior and actions of men and women towards each other. See, we cannot think about the women without being, you know, the men around, because that's where the whole reaction, the whole, you know, things keeps happening place. Now, understanding these gender relations and the power dynamic behind them is a prerequisite for understanding individuals' access and distribution to various resources in the society and ability to make the decision based on these resources. Okay, so whether women and men, boys and girls, they are affected by so many aspects, political processes, social developments, you know, in the society. Even if a situation like corona, situation like economical recession, everything ultimately is going to affect women because it affects gender. Okay, I'm just keeping the gender in the US because it's the biggest country. The the breadwinner traditionally is a male. Okay, and this is who's supposed to provide economic support and protection of the family. Housewife, a traditional gender role found in the United States that view females as responsible for child rearing and domestic activities. Now, based on this, many things keeps happening. Why do we look at gendered brain? Now, this is a very important. Now, is the brain, it is an anatomical aspect of the human body. So why are we thinking about gendered brain? Because, this is how why think differently. Why women think differently. Why she behave differently in stress situation. Why do women act more emotionally as compared to men? Why do men and women excel at different types of tasks? And that's the reason why the whole concept in the literature it was developed in terms of the gender brain. No differences in brain function. I'm talking not from the medical perspective only, but in general, medical, social, cultural, and political in many ways. Studies of perception, cognition, memory, and neural functions have found apparent gender differences. Okay, these differences may be attributed to various genetic, hormonal, and environmental factors. They do not reflect any overall superiority advantage to either sex. Okay, both sexes are equal in intelligence, but tend to operate differently. Now, this is a very, very important aspect because a same work, a same writing poem, same thinking about science, but it may react in a different way. So brain and gender, okay, men and women appear to use different parts of the brain to encode memories, sense emotions, recognize faces, solve certain problems, and make decisions. Since the brain controls cognition and behavior, these gender-related functional differences may be associated with the gender-specific structure of the brain. I mean, there are a stream of the people who talk about gender-specific structure. Indeed, when men and women of similar intelligence and aptitude perform equally well, their brains appear to go about it differently, as if nature had separate blueprints for them. So this is a very important perspective. Now, the anatomy perhaps is the same. There is no absence of organ. Anatomy of liver is same for the men and women. Pancreas is same for men and women. Brain is also same for men and women. But the functional output, is probably different perspective, which we need to understand. A brain difference, between men and women, evidence from deep learning. People have done MRI, EEG, so many things, okay? It highlights the importance of, it gives a new insight into the structural difference between men and women, highlighting the importance of considering sex as a biological variable in brain research. Now, this is a very, very important, it's a being female or being male is a biological variable. Instead of looking at the brain, it is the sex as a variable in the brain research. It might be related to gender differences in cognition, emotional control, as well as neurological disorders. Now, this is a very, very important perspective for us to know. It is underexplored research. Sex differences have been of enduring biological interest. The potential influence of the sex are underexplored in neuroscientific research. Okay, we probably talk about the biology of the men and women, the therapeutic intervention in the men and women. A more detailed picture of how the brains of the males and females differ because several psychiatric disorders and conditions differ in their prevalence between the different sexes. So this is where we have to really understand. The brain disorders, rates of Alzheimer's disease are higher in females than males, prompting a recent call for the prioritization of the biomedical research into sex differences in measures relevant to the disorder. Females also show a higher prevalence of major depressive disorder. Besides organ-related disorders, premenstrual syndrome, menopausal problems, postpartum disorder, these are the women-related problems which we really need to understand. And we have to probably understand a very famous word, neurosexism. A very interesting, when I was going through literature, I came across this particular word. Neurosexism is defined as the assumption that behavioral differences between males and females stem from variations in brain development rather than from socialization. A very, very restricted definition, restricted concept, making women in relation to a body, the sexiest assumption that all differences perceived between men and women are a direct result of neurological difference. Okay, so relates to historical baggage which women is carrying, which is negatively shaped society's belief connecting female to illness. Okay, so neurosexism probably was more pathologization of female experience as an illness and mental illness, and this probably required to be reshaped. Somebody has reshaped this, we will come across, and this was a major challenge. Okay, so we have those pink and blue ideas even in the brain studies. Okay, we will go at a very famous aspect of the women. Everybody talks about compassion. Okay, Dalai Lama argued that women have more biological potential for compassion than men. Does science support the claim? Now, this is a very important claim. Okay. See, biological compassion, stereotypically, females are portrayed as more nurturing and empathetic, while males are portrayed as less emotional and more cognitive. They are more about thinking orientation. This is a very important perspective. And there is important quantitative gender difference in the basic networks involved in affective and cognitive forms of empathy. Remember that affective empathy is more in women, and cognitive empathy, which probably based on just the thinking aspect without being emotional, is more in men. There is also qualitative divergence between the sexes in how emotional information which you receive is going to be integrated to support major decision-making processes. This is very important for a woman because when she gets married, it is the emotional information which probably is integrated to take the decision about that, and that's where the premarital counseling becomes a very important perspective. Biological dimension of the compassion: females are faster and more accurate than males in recognizing facial expression, and that is the reason why they react more comfortably to other people or other to children's expression also, because they are faster in that. In females, the basic networks involved in affective empathy are more developed. Okay, and a more elaborate brain processing happens in the women than men by engaging prefrontal and cingulated cortices. Now, this is a very, very important perspective, because the way the brain functions in terms of the compassionate aspect, this is a very important perspective. There is a nice shairi, by Abbas Tabish. It's a very, very important. एक मुद्दत से मेरी माँ नहीं सोई ताबिश, एक मुद्दत से मेरी माँ नहीं सोई ताबिश, मैंने एक बार कहा था मुझे डर लगता है. Okay, this is a very important. This is where the compassion of the woman comes. Women may at times have higher levels of oxytocin. This is called as a cuddle hormone or love hormone because it is linked to bonding, social connection, and monogamy. Of course, it is also linked to the aggression. We will come to that. While women tend to express nurturing compassion, men tend to express fierce compassion. This is a very, again, important perspective because they are probably trained that way. Okay. Socialization is a very important process. Okay, men and women, and this is irrespective of the brain development, with the same nutrition, with the same growth, the men have the extremely different socialization process as of infancy. Think about girls, okay, who handed dolls and baby carriages. They are how they are more caring. They suggest nurturing, and they are basically caretaking attitude. Boys who are handed superheroes and toy soldiers, what they suggest, more fighting spirit and protecting behaviors. Okay. Remember, when girls or women cry, it is seen normal. But if boys or men cry, they are often taught crying is not manly. So these are an important concept which get developed both in men and women. So both of them, they learn their social roles. At the same time, they learn the other gender, sex social roles also, and that is what they contribute in their growing process, and they just decide what is to be done in their sex roles and what is not to be done in their sex role. So because of that, compassion may have taken on a different look and feel depending on our evolutionary needs for survival. Now this is very, very important because we probably have a very different way of looking at our needs, okay, and how to fulfill those needs. Cultural influence on gender schema. This is another thing which I came across the literature. Sandra Braham in 1981 proposed that a child's cognitive development combined with societal influence largely influence the pattern of thought, and that is schema that dictate male and female traits. Both of them understand what are the male and female trait, and that is the way they probably get dictated because of the cognitive development. See, this is where it is very important. It is unlike Freud. The Freud probably thought about the anatomical organs and mainly sex organs in understand the developmental phases. Here it is a cognitive. There are many other people who have known about the cognitive development, but this schema, which is a very important, not only how people process information, but also on the attitude and belief that direct gender appropriate behavior. So there are schemas of gender appropriate and gender inappropriate behaviors which are developed cognitively in women and men. A girl raised in a traditional culture, might believe that the only path available to her as a woman is to get married and raise kids. Probably that is the schema for her. Okay. By contrast, a girl raised in a more progressive culture might pursue a career, avoid having children, or decide not to get married, which we see nowadays coming, in the women in a more way, and what we call as a modern women or urban women. Basically, more than the modernity or more than the urbanity or more than the rural, it is just a matter of the environment around which creates these cognitive gender schemas in the mind of the people. Now these things which are again are being challenged over the time. Okay, so we have to really understand. Margaret Thatcher, now this is where I'm coming, it's a very interesting. If you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman. Okay, that means there is a lot perspective of doing, and many of scientists have accepted that. There we are coming into why women are multitaskers. Now this is a very important perspective. See, in the situation where women, are finding it easier than men to multitask and switch between the tasks. They can do email, take phones, answer the calls, shift in the meetings, at the same time they are working on the computer, they are giving the meal to the child, they actually are feeding meal to the child. Okay, so the researchers suggest women spend more time thinking at the beginning. For example, the women may think that I have to finish my office work by tomorrow. Also, I need to feed my child right now. So let me do this together. So she plans. While men are more impulsive and jump in too quickly. Okay, so this is a very important perspective. Of course, there is a research who challenges this also, and there is equivocal research, and there is still there are contrasting views. Okay, now this implies women are more equipped to stop and process what's going on in front of them at that point, or in a stressful situation and complex situation. So she knows to take decision. For example, there is no food, at the home, or there is less food. The suddenly the guests arrive. She takes quick decision what is available in the fridge and what can we do. So that is a stressful and complex situation. But these are some of the important aspects where we need to understand the multitasking perspective. Okay. Currently, American psychologist Jerry Levy proposes men to tend to have better special skills and women are better at more verbal tasks. Now, these survival traits have been passed down from generation to generation. This is very important. Like, why these gender differences in multitasking exist? Because remember, the women at home generally have learned to communicate with the children and communicate many things with the children. Okay, while the men went for the hunting or earning. So some of these aspects is a very important perspective for the women to learn. Female sex hormones acting on the brain may determine women's ability to multitask. I mean, some of the research which says about that estrogen, progesterone, some of these sex hormones probably are working, in the brains of the hippocampal area, and that multitasking is possible because planning is possible and implementation is also possible. This is very, very important perspective. I mean, aggression in women generally is not, understood so nicely. Okay. Globally, men are more violent. Violent is more than aggression. Okay. So men are more violent than women in most of the scientific research. Women are less physically aggressive than men. Okay. And they tend to engage in predominantly indirect aggression. I mean, something which men generally don't like, they keep gossiping or they keep taunting or they probably get into the passive behavior, so that is indirect aggression. Of course, there is a reason to do that, women generally would probably have the direct threat in the aggression from the men if they are beaten, So in such a situation, maybe there is a choice of a woman not to have the direct aggression where probably she, will be victimized more. And that's the reason why there is generally indirect aggression. We know little of the underpinnings of the women's aggression. It's not much studied and probably it needs to be studied. There are, of course, studied on the PET scan studies or functional studies, MRI studies, but this is very not yet conclusive, Why susceptibility in women about aggression? There is a immediate partner violence. With equal frequency, it happens, but less severity than men, and rarely there is a sexual aggression. Okay, women generally do not have much sexual aggression. There may be physical aggression because that's the mind, the women's mind about the sex is a very different perspective altogether. Maybe we don't have that much time to discuss that today, but we will just touch upon it. Women are susceptible to alcohol related aggression a lot, but this type of aggression some of the research said may be limited to women's high in the trait aggression. You know, those are aggressive generally will become more aggressive with alcohol. Fear of being harmed is a robust inhibitor of a direct aggression in women. Okay, generally we get some cases of direct aggression, but then those direct aggressions are the women who are not in touch with the reality, maybe psychotic women or something like that. Most people who are in touch with the reality don't choose to be directly aggressive. Role of testosterone, oxytocin, and cortisol is there, but again, the studies are not very consistent. And remember, this work probably is required to contribute to the development or more effective evidence-based treatment that target gender-specific risk for the aggression. Because I mean, with the domestic violence, these studies are coming in the picture, and this is where we probably need to understand and study more. The interaction between biologically specified sex difference and socio-cultural construction generally interact together to produce lower direct aggression in women relatively to men nearly everywhere in the world. Okay, so whether it is America, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is periphery villages, everywhere, the socio-cultural construction is a very important pointer, to curb the aggression in the women. Immediate partner violence causes visibly greater physical and psychological harm in women than men. And we call it as a victimization, basically. But that also required to be studied dynamically. This is the nice sketch where it talks about, very early development because of the prenatal drug, alcohol and testosterone exposure, when the child is in the womb, postnatal maternal depression. That's a very early development of the aggression. But here what is important is high testosterone and low cortisol, or fMRI study with the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, amygdala, putamen, these all studies, in the hippocampus and EEG finding have suggested neural and hormonal characteristic of aggression in women. The most common we have seen is the indirect aggression and verbal aggression, and less injurious immediate partner violence. Okay, I mean, she hits, she beats, but generally she abuses, immediate partner. Otherwise, the men generally get into the actual aggression and violence and body beating. Okay, somewhat common is the alcohol related, less common is the physical aggression and serious injurious behavior, attacks to the immediate partner, and rare is the sexual violence in the women. This is the spectrum of the aggressive women. This is very interesting by Oscar Wilde. Women are made to be loved, not understood. We generally know that this is something which really kept happening, because even in the romantic relationship, generally women are not supposed to express, the thought process. So there is a gender stereotype about sex. Men have more of it, both in frequency and intensity in sexual relationship. In women, desire is much more a matter of the mind than mechanics. Okay, it is a very important, because she thinks about her mind and seems to be more affected by partner relationship. Remember, more the women in the secure relationship, in the loving relationship, in longer stable relationship, generally, her desire probably is much more. Okay, it is also depends on what's going on around them, and perhaps most important, how they feel about themselves. Like, it's very important to understand that you can't make women feel sexually attractive just by saying so many things. It is a very important aspect about her that she thinks and she has her own way of looking at herself, and thinking about this particular aspect about herself. Okay, Sexual desire in women, like men, there is a biological basis because it is biology. I mean, sexual behavior is based on the biology, which is a very important perspective. But women feeling good about themselves emotionally and physically appears to be a bigger mediator of women's desire than men's. Okay, she needs that feeling good, she needs that emotional feeling or emotional well-being, and a physical, she should feel secure about. Okay, women are their own point of reference for how sexy they are. Like generally they don't get carried away. They have their own assumptions, their own framework about it. Such self-focus plays out most obviously in women's body image. This is a very important. Okay, women who have low self-esteem and though about thought, very degrading thought about physical appearance during sex, they have less satisfying sex and they have more distress about their entire sex lives. Okay, remember that's a reason why there is irritability, there is a depression, there is a verbal aggression. All this is simply because they have their own less satisfying sexual image. And this is very important, and this is where perhaps needs the intervention by expert people, generally the main gate women at that age, just, telling that she's just not interested and she's irritable about it. That is the point really when we need to understand, before even giving or prescribing tablets or any other hardcore treatment, what is she feeling about herself? How is she thinking about herself? Is she hating her body image? Is she finding herself not so sexually adequate? And this is a very, very important consideration, to think about. There is definitely a mind-body gap in a whole perspective. Body consciousness is not the only distraction for a woman. Okay, there are many more. And that they are all related to multiple roles women feel today. They are career oriented, they are mothers, they are leaders. So many things are there. So that is something probably which playing on their mind, which is working on their image, working on their self-respect and self-esteem. And that's where the mind-body gap comes. Subjectively, women feel sexual desire and they care more about subjective arousal. This is a very, very important, again, perspective, a very simple but need to be understood when we talk to these women. Okay, women may just need more time for their minds to catch up to their bodies. This is a very, very, again, a practical point, because they just don't get satisfied. They really need to understand. There's a reason why of late, we tell women with the depression generally to get into exercise, to get into physical activities. This is a very, very important. Sometimes, artistically, if we see the dance therapy, music therapies, or any art therapy, it works better in the women simply because this particular aspect, to catch up to their bodies can go, without threatening their self-image comfortably to these art therapies. We come to the Sigmund Freud. He's a great man. His views on women stirred controversy during his own lifetime, and it continued to evoke considerable debate till date. Women oppose change, receive passively, and add nothing of their own. That was a statement he had, and he had, that probably was the most ridiculous statement he made in his 1925 paper entitled "The Psychical Consequence of the Anatomic Distinction Between the Sexes." Of course, he withdrew that. Okay, eventually many people, Karen Horney and many people, started opposing him. But interestingly, his own granddaughter opposed him, and he withdrew that. He of course apologized for that particular statement. So whether psychoanalysis, psychology, cognitive, the women have been the victim of the myths. The biological myths, sexual myths, and that is where the need to change over the years. Okay, what he says is very important. Sigmund Freud, he said then, today people are still saying that despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, I have not been able to answer the great question that has never been answered: what does a woman want? Okay, Sigmund Freud said it, many people follow it. Generally, people will never understand what does a woman want unless and until their communication styles improve, unless and until they start understanding woman as a human. Okay, which is a very important, because woman's role generally is a sex related, with even multiple roles, all roles are sex related. But when woman is viewed as a human, perhaps she would able to express, and people would able to understand what she wants. Okay, more research is needed to investigate whether men and women really have different brain structures. Difficult to say, but definitely social experience and cultural impact eventually will matter. And remember Gina Rippon. Now this, she is the lady. When I spoke about neurosexism, the whole neurology probably was thinking about the sexually oriented perspective about, especially about women, to let her down, maybe even at the disease level, even at a pathologization, this is where she worked, and she said a gendered world will produce a gendered brain. Right? Now, there is nothing about anatomy. There is nothing about physiology. There is everything about social and cultural myths and misunderstanding probably need to be challenged by scientific data. Okay. So this is where I would say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, madam. It was such a fantastic and such an interesting and engrossing information about women's mind. We were really enthralled, madam. Thank you so much about bringing in the different aspects and also the research that have taken place in this on this particular topic. So I think Jyoti, you can just see whether there are some points for discussion or any questions asked, so that we can take the discussion further. Hello.
Yes.
Anirban, Jyoti Shetty madam is there?
Yes, madam is there. Jyoti madam, any questions you have encountered?
Yeah. Yes. Can I go from the first question?
Yes, Jyoti, please.
Yeah. Ms. Razia Band asks, women is mind is a creative mind. Agree with me or not? I think that's probably we can take a vote later.
Women is a creative mind.
Agree with me or not, she says.
Well, yes. I mean, women is everything which exists in the world. She has creative mind, definitely. Yes.
Okay. The second question is by Dr. Deepalakshmi Peshwe. Delays in marriage age of working women. She's framed it as a statement. I think she wants to ask whether it is all right. I will just assume that that is the question. whether it is desirable?
I think this is the recent trend which we see because of the marriage perspective. There is this little, from the traditional myths, we are probably in a transitional society at this juncture, and we see the women are, struggling with the career development. At the same time, the personal settlement, the issue which goes behind. Now, this is a very important perspective for many women, because today women, she doesn't like to compromise on the career perspective. Okay, and remember that it is said, even if you look at the actors, okay, the marriage probably can make a negative impact on their career, whether it is executive, in a different field. And that's the reason why, and this is a important perspective in that sense, because it is a myth. Basically it is believed that women generally may not perform well after they take marital responsibilities. Okay, and this is the myth of which the woman is a victim. Okay, I think we have to understand this particular perspective. There is this assumption which is pretty vibrant around. It is vibrant in corporate sector also, and that's where we have to be careful. In spite of all that development which we see, remember that there is still, when I was going through the literature for this particular talk, I was quite surprised myself that the representation of the women in the technology, in the science, is much less. Okay, and this is what we really need to take seriously, because there are women who are coming. See, politically we are seeing less women. Generally I feel more women probably will change a lot of scenario everywhere, whether it is in America or India. I mean there are issues there, but this is a very important perspective, because statistic won't lie. Whatever statistic won't lie. Let us not have assumption here. It is the factual situation, and why these women probably got back into the whole perspective. Again, the whole issue of the gendered brain come in the picture, and this is what we have to take into account.
Yes, ma'am. Rightly said. True. Rajesh Alone asks, is women and men mind science different? I think, madam, you elaborated a lot anyway. But if yes, then what is exactly the difference? I think madam has already given quite a lot of inputs with regards to the science. So can we go, if there's anything to add, I think, ma'am.
See, the other perspective, see, the biology is all good, what we talk about biology, because that's the base of the science. However, we cannot negate socio-cultural impact on the developmental process or the socialization process. And whatever negative happens in terms of the emotions, in terms of the behavioral perspective, that gets reflected on the people who are more vulnerable. As simple as that. So the women are more vulnerable, and that's the reason why the impact of all these things happen. I think there are many things which we still do not know about the women. There is research which is not yet coming. There are different perspective about communication style, intuitiveness, the compassion, the expressivity, the behavioral performance, the intellectual perspectives, all those things require to be still studied a lot. I think there is a lot to be explored. It is unexplored field.
Thank you, ma'am. The next is a statement actually by Ram Gopal Putne. The social work is arts, and science is a behavioral science, like women's wellness, welfare, etc. Vidya Deshmukh asks why women are very emotional.
Yeah, see, by all practical purpose, there should not be difference between the emotional perspective of the men and women. But the whole thing probably is allowed in the whole world, which I said is expressivity of the emotion. I mean, this is a very I won't say it is a negative thing. I would say it is a positive thing that women can express their, dard bhi hai, or all pain they can express. In fact, it is not allowed to express by a man because of socialization process, and that's the reason why relatively women appears to be emotional, but actually feeling of the emotion may not be different, in the men and women. It is just a matter of expressivity. As I said, the compassionate level is much more in the women, that's the way they are trained. So maybe in that perspective, the emotional, aspect may sound relatively more, expressive more in the women. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Miss Sunita Rani asks 3 questions. Actually, how to overcome stress and depression caused by traumatic experiences by self-help. So,
How to overcome stress?
stress and depression caused by traumatic experiences. I think what she means is like how to help yourself overcome stress and depression on your own, which
Yeah.
has been caused by
Yeah,
any traumatic
yes.
experience.
I think there she's probably taking a very important point ahead, and that is the help-seeking behavior. Okay, help-seeking behavior in women is much less compared to men. Okay, and that is where when women tolerates, women tolerate disease for years. There's a reason why a simple tumor becomes a breast cancer eventually. She tolerates blood pressure that becomes a stroke eventually. Okay, so similarly in the stress, what you need, women probably need, she feels that, in a multiple roles that she should have a perfectionist role. No, women should improve upon their help seeking whenever it is needed. That is the first important aspect. Tolerance, patience, all those are very nice words but are not useful words. Okay, women have to improve upon their help seeking perspective. That means they should have a good network, not just in the brain, but a good network socially, to connect to, to reach to in the stressful situation. I think this is a very important. We feel, I was working on the harassment and domestic violence aspect in the KM hospital. I'm still working on that with those group. But remember, the women don't ask for the help. Okay, and that is where the whole thing gets out of the context, out of the reach. So the first help seeking, faster help seeking, appropriate help seeking will matter a lot.
Yes, yes, definitely, ma'am. I think reaching out to, yes, women really helps. Her second question is how to raise a single introverted teenager in a nuclear family so that she doesn't feel lonely. How to raise a single introverted teenager in a nuclear family.
Yes, I think this is a very important question, but it's a very serious issue basically, because see, people generally have their own nature. All of us are born. I mean, the two men, two women, everybody is born, with their nature. Let us not even think about men and women. Okay, so introverted people generally have their own cycle of comfort. Okay, their own zone of the comfort, and we probably need to respect and understand that zone of comfort. When the adolescent, when it is growing, generally all of us keep harping on how that adolescent should behave, in the social circle. Okay, and we want that adolescent to follow or adapt to the notions which we have about people, and we really don't understand that, having the introversion is a natural phenomena or normal trait for that person. Similarly, we do have the troubles with the too much extrovert adolescent even at home, but we really need to understand, get that comfort zone, and all the people need to understand that's a biology, that's a characteristic, and then start being a positive in terms of the approach, not so much demanding socially, because many of the people who come to our clinics, generally there is a lot of social demands, he should go to the parties, he should mix with the people, why he can't attend a friend's birthday, why he can't goes to the with other children for the picnic. I think if this is not being done, you can't push, by pushing that, children, adolescents will start losing confidence in self, their self-esteem will go down, and we really have to take care of that, understand what is there, how much they can socialize in the introvert, and how much they do interact. But if they don't, by their own biological requirement, we have to understand, adjust, you can't push people to change their biology, to change their nature.
It's true. Her third question by Sunita Rani is, mishandling of emotions by others results in harsh temperament and negativity. How to change bitter emotions by self-help?
Yeah, basically, if you keep reacting to the world, the things are going to haywire, right? We have to probably look at our own requirement, our own emotions, our own comfort in our emotions, which is a very, very important, basically. See, if you don't get angry with the people who hurt you, I think you are there. You are there. So if you have to come to that particular level, you have to tune yourself by not getting, not getting hurt. People can't hurt you if you don't allow them to hurt you. Now, this is an absolute cognitive message. I think you probably would get lots of WhatsApp message also. And I like this, that, you should know your own, लोगों को क्यों ढूंढना है? Basically, why you want people to decide your happiness? Why can't you decide your own happiness? So sometimes telling people bye bye, enough is enough. Let me have my own cup of coffee and let me enjoy it is a very important. It may sound rude, but if you are comfortable with it, just don't worry.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. That's wonderfully said. Then Tina Susan asks, is the mind an intricate for women? I think what she means is the mind intricate in women?
No, I didn't understand this.
Even I didn't get this actually. Is the mind an intricate for women? I'm not really clear what she means by that.
They say woman's mind is very, even Freud says so. I mean, everybody says so. So I think we probably have to understand that people don't have much knowledge about it.
Okay. And Apurva Gadgil, of course, says Shubhangi madam is an inspiration to all women. Blessed to have you, ma'am, here. Then there is Anup from Bangalore. Actually, he's got a very long, it's more like a statement and then a question. Dear doctor, in the recent excavation of Sinoli, UP, had discovered many astonishing artifacts, which has made us to rethink about the history we learned. One among them was in female burials, found a shield, sword, bow and arrows, which states that 4,500 years ago, even women used to be warriors. According to you, what is that which changed from the brilliant gold era to the current condition wherein women's fight for equal rights? Is it that the brutal invaders era, that is 800 years, Mughals, 200 years, Britishers, which degraded the social conditions of women in Bharat?
It's a very deep and serious question. My historical understanding is not so good, but I think women is changing over the time. There were warriors. Rani Lakshmi Bai was warrior, in our own country, and there were so many women. But I think they played the role when it was appropriate for their society, and they played that role, as a warrior. Whenever women played that role, I think she was socially in that role. Okay, she was socially. So ultimately, how your society, shapes you and how you respond to it appropriately will decide. You know, historically, because your question can be answered by philosophers differently and historians differently. But I do understand, you know, if you women can be warrior. I mean, there is nothing can stop, you know, basically, because if she needs to play that, people have played that role, you know.
Yes, ma'am. That's very nicely answered. There are two Poojas who have said thank you, ma'am, for a very interesting, informative session. Kashish Thapar says, could you comment on women's predisposition to dissociative and other neurotic disorders, and what specifically to consider in terms of treatment?
Yes. Oh, this is exactly where I was with the concept of neurosexism. You know, I think certain disorders, bodily disorders or social reactions, were pathologized. You know, basically because hysterical or conversion disorder we see in both the male and female generally. So you know, whatever treatment procedures which we have, you know, for both males and females, we should follow it scientifically. You know, I mean, it's not that women generally do have a more you know, illnesses which we probably tune as a feminine illnesses. There is nothing like a feminine illness unless and until it is hormonal, you know, which probably is diverted because of those particular issues. So whatever scientifically you are comfortable, you learn, that's the way should be treated both men and women. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. There's another question from Kashish. Also, could you shed some light on biology of those who identify as females? I think he was meaning transgenders. He's actually
Yes.
my resident, so
Yeah, yeah, but
he's asking
should we
academic
get
questions.
into it? I mean, that's a different topic
Yeah,
altogether. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, but that is definitely something that's interesting. Then Manisha Deshmukh from Baramati asks, is multitasking in women making them more sick? It's a very nice, important question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is multi
yes. See, multitasking in the women, unless and until, you know, her adaptation or her adjustment to that, you know, is not healthy. You know, if she's pushing herself, you know, then it probably will give her a stress related trouble. You know, it will give her fatigue. You know, it will give definitely her mental tiredness, and that's what we need to understand. Otherwise, women, you know, are easier at multitasking depending on what kind of task. You know, the task which they love, which they commit to, which they find near their heart, generally, you know, it doesn't tire them, you know, basically. Yes.
Yeah. Meena asks, politically, we seem to be doing better, ma'am. Example, New Zealand and Germany. I didn't, politically, women seems to be doing. I don't know what they mean by
Yes,
W.
yes. Yeah. Uh, I would say we are doing better. Basically, because these are the very small, I mean, very simple, very isolated examples. And I'm happy when they do better, you know, generally when you hear such things. But see, the women force is still not even, you know, remarkable in terms of you. We do have the women in country, but it is not so many. Those who are there are making their presence felt, definitely. But we need more women in politics, certainly.
Definitely, yeah. Meena again asks, women leadership, some views, please, ma'am.
Some
Just some women leadership, some views. That's all her request.
see, women leadership is one of the important issue today. People are looking at, you know, and people are trying to study also that how do we get many more leaders which are less leadership. But when women leadership came in the picture, it came with the passion and commitment. You know, this is a very important. Whatever women came, but remember that in the whole leadership concept of comparison of the men and women needed to put lot of efforts. You know, we need double the efforts than man who get into leadership. So it is definitely a very hard and costly, but they are there and they are capable, because the planning, the intuitive thinking, the compassionate, I mean, there are studies, women leaders in corporate sectors have done extremely well because of this particular quality of forming social network, good communication styles, compassionate outlook, and the planning. They have done well, yes. But they are not there many, basically.
Yeah, that's true. Meena also asked, in Indian culture, why are women still asked to sacrifice? The question is, in Indian culture, why are women still asked to sacrifice?
Yeah, basically, I would say in even Western culture, even in European culture, everywhere the first important thing is the sacrifice is expected from the women, basically. And now, the compromise is expected from the women. In Indian culture, it is little, it looks little more, because the sacrifice is much more in the family related issues, basically, because women's sacrifice is generally around her family context, and that's quite a thing, basically, because we know many women have given up the jobs, many women, at the when there was opportunity. So that kind of sacrifice is definitely something which is deteriorating aspect or disturbing aspect or sabotaging aspect, which one really needs to think about.
Yes, sure. Madhura Kelkar asks, are women more anxious than men? Do they tend to take more stress than men? And does age play an important role in women's stress handling ability? There are three
See,
questions actually.
yeah. See, yes. I mean, this is something which I was, as I was going through this particular lecture only. As far as the stress is concerned, the women's anxiety is not more than the men's anxiety. Okay. However, their adaptation again, to that anxiety is little different. Basically, because the adaptation is not healthy. They feel anxious level is the same, but women generally are not more socialized, so adaptation to this particular anxiety becomes a more personified. That's the whole issue. Otherwise, feeling anxious is the same. Of course, the depression in women is much more than the men, basically, but anxiety level is not seen in terms of reports, at least. Yes.
Yes.
But adaptation, I mean, see, there is a one level ahead. How do you adapt to the stress? How do you adapt to your reaction to the stress? Now, that is where there are gender differences.
Yes. Yeah. Rekha Dattale asks, women working as multitasking personality, how she can keep fit her mental health? So
Yeah,
someone,
that is a one more task she needs to add, to her agenda. Basically, having self commitment is a one more task every woman should add to their agenda of multitask, because if you don't take care of your health, then nobody else will take. No, because see, for women the caretakers are less. For the men, there are women caretakers. Okay, so I think that particular task needs to be added in the multitasking and committingly added, which is very important. If you have to take a good diet, yes. If you have to go for the exercise, you have to do this, find out the time. You can't say my husband needs puran puri, so I won't go for to and do exercise today. No, that cannot be done.
yes. Apurva Gadgil asks, why are there more negative emotions like jealousy, hatred, and so on with other women than men having these emotions with other men? So
Because
her
they are more
question.
compassionate. Because they are more compassionate, they react. Generally for the men, getting involved to the core level is not a norm. Not a norm. For the women, it is almost it is a total committed in the relationship, as I was telling in those particular slide. So when there is a total relationship, the hate comes, the jealousy comes, be out of insecurity. This is a very, let us not look at the negativity, let us look at why this happens, basically.
Yeah, sure. Jayashree Tungaras, as you talked about premarital counseling, how, according to you, will it be helpful emotionally and psychologically to both men and women?
See, I actually have not done premarital counseling as my profession, okay? But whenever, I mean, what we have done is with our students generally, when they had the problem. So generally, we tend to, tell them to have the full view, not a very tunnel vision about the relationship. It is a full view, basically, that what difficulties and what positivity. I think they should put, I use simple cognitive approaches, asking them to take pen and paper and write down what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and how you will cope up with those things, basically. Because in premarital counseling, important thing is to give a major view, commitment and what can be expected. People should be ready, people should be ready for the to the negative aspect also of the life, and that's what we do.
Yeah. Dr. Pradnya asked two questions and both are related. Why women are more vulnerable to depression and how to safeguard from depression?
Yeah. Women vulnerable to depression is lot of biological vulnerability and lot of psychosocial vulnerability. Both the vulnerabilities are higher. Biologically, the women's neurotransmitters and brain react like that, and that's a reason why depression is much more common. And treating the depression is ideally what mental health professionals do. Basically, see, preventing depression is a very catchy thing. Okay, if when we say women are vulnerable, we really need to accept the fact that this is where it will come in the picture, and how she can cope up and adjust the whole life with the maintaining good quality of life with the depression. Okay, so I think we have to be very sincere and committed to deal with the women with the depression, because we shouldn't give them the extra hopes. We have to get them on the reality stand, what best they can do for themselves and how they can go ahead with the whole thing. It's like telling people that take care of your sugar, and you need to accept that it is going to be in trouble, and you really need to follow this particular path. So women also need to look at the aspect which are important in terms of coping with the stress, coping with the interpersonal relationship, taking care of the body, and so many things, basically.
Yes. Anjali Joglekar asks, it is said that the girl child is stronger than the male child at birth. Is this true?
No. It's I don't know. I mean, is it it is just, see, there are so many myths. Okay, so I think both children are born, physiologically, anatomically, functionally as the same thing. Basically, we make them strong, and later after exposing them while we nurture them. Yes.
Meena has three statements. One is, ma'am, our department at KEM has thrived with your leadership and subsequently as well. She also asks, what are your views about sexual harassment in corporate culture?
Oh, that's that's another topic, because I was working in this area. I mean, I'm still attached to them for last 20 years, and what do you mean by views? Basically, it happens. That's it. It happens. I
And
would
it
say
should
in a
not.
simple statement. Yes, it
And
happens, and women should raise the voice. The trouble, they don't.
Yes. Meena, this is the last question, I think, for today. premarital therapy seems to have replaced the talk by parents and grandparents, ma'am. I think it's more like a statement, but yes, probably. Any comments on that, ma'am?
But they were good, no? I think they gave something out of their own experience. I mean, nothing wrong.
Yeah. And of course, this is all paid therapy.
So far, grandparents and parents don't allow them to interfere in marital life. Premarital is all okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Thank you. I think,
because
yeah, I think that is the end of the questions. And thank you very much, ma'am. It's been a great lecture listening to you. And it's great to actually meet online in these pandemic times. Thank you very much. I will hand over to Madhumita. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm sure all my friends have enjoyed this session very, very much. At least for my own self, I can say that it was really such a mesmerizing presentation by Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, madam. And just to sum up, see, we have, madam has introduced us to many new words also and new aspects of a woman's life. The complex, her complex brain, how she uses it to perform the different roles in life. The gendered brain, the neurosexism, it was something very interesting to know. She told us about the affective empathy and the cognitive empathy, which really we all actually need to look into. This was a different thing that I learned, madam. We came to know about the nurturing compassion, the fierce compassion. In all, on a woman's mind, what are the social and cultural influences that that really bring her up the way she is brought? We have come to know about the aggression, the susceptibility in women, and most importantly, we know how self-esteem of a woman is so important. A very, very important takeaway point from madam that I would like to stress upon is that women always want and they to be treated and viewed as humans. Only when they will be viewed as humans and not only as a woman, the expected gender role she is imprisoned into, she can, I think, relieve herself of that and really come out successfully for the betterment of herself, for the betterment of her family, and for the betterment of society in large, I am sure. So we must know that a woman's mind, madam has very well put it, it is a perfect integration of scientific capacity and the artistic ability, which makes her stand unique. She efficiently intertwines all the practical and sensitive demands of in life situations and brings forth magical solutions. That is why we see that all the countries who perhaps have women prime ministers have dealt much, much better in this COVID pandemic. This Women's Day special was not an attempt to elevate the status of a woman or prove a superiority of a woman. It was simply aimed at understanding and celebrating the special talents that a woman has been bestowed with and celebrating the existence of each and every one of us. These specialties, my dear friends, are our strengths. Let us hone our skills and move forward with unwavering courage. No comparison, no suppression, no guilt, no superhuman expectations from self. That is most important. And basically, no glorification that we want to do about ourselves also. We just, as women, want to live to the fullest. That is what we all want. I would like to say few lines that Gulzar has always said, चल जिंदगी नई शुरुआत करते हैं, जो उम्मीद औरों से की थी वो अब खुद से करते हैं, कहता है ये पल खुद से निकल, धूप आंगन में आने दे, जीते हैं चल, now is the time to actually live fully and live fully and completely for the benefit of all. Indira Gandhi has very nicely put it, to be liberated, woman must feel free to be herself, not in rivalry to men, but in the context of her own capacity and her own personality. Thank you very much, Shubhangi Parkar, madam. Thank you all my friends, and thank you all those who have joined us on this wonderful webinar. I think we need to hold more webinars, more aspects about ourselves. And I am very, very happy for this wonderful evening. And thanks to Centaur and thanks to everybody once again. Thank you all. Over to Anirban.
Thank you, ma'am.
Poonam Patil will now express her vote of thanks.
Yes, Poonam madam.
Ma'am, yours is mute.
Madam, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
It was really a wonderful academic session. Madam Dr. Parker has done a fantabulous job in this session. She has floated us in the sea of knowledge to know more about women, her biopsychosocial side, and her specific cognition to make her as a special gender. We are sure that this will help us to know more about women's psychopathology and her socio-cultural adjustments. Thank you, madam, once again for your wonderful session on understanding woman as human. I request Mr. Manglesh Pal to hand over a token of appreciation to Dr. Parker, madam, on behalf of PP and IPS Pune branch. Mr. Manglesh. Mr. Manglesh?
Yeah, he has given, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. I also thank Dr. Bahale and Dr. Jyoti Shetty for moderating this session. I thank Dr. Dhananjay Ashturkar and Dr. Bhalchandra Karmik for coordinating the session. I thank all the senior psychiatrists, colleagues, friends, along with the psychologists for attending this session to make it as a huge success. Today we have around more than 230 delegates in this live session. So that's a big achievement. I thank Mr. Anurag Srivastava, Mr. Aniran Mitra, Mr. Mahesh Apar, Ms. Shruti Shettigar, Ms. Rahila Khan, and the entire team of Centaur for being the academic partner and for arranging things in a perfect fashion. I think they have really taken great efforts to make this session a huge success. I now hand over to Mr. Anurag Srivastava for the closing of this session.
Good evening, all. First of all, I would like to thank IPS Pune branch and PPA for giving this wonderful opportunity to be a part of this academic feast. I want to thank the entire Pune team for this. And furthermore, adding to it, I think today, this celebration of women, I think is basically what Bale Madam has said, that it's basically a celebration of our own existence. We would not have been here if women would not have been in this world. So our own existence depends on all women. It's not about glorifying anybody. Again, only realizing the fact that sometimes we forget this basic fact that we all are here. We all are here in this world because of all of you. So thank you very much. I don't have any other word to say thank you to Professor Dr. Shubhangi Parkar ma'am. I have met ma'am for more than 15-16 years. in the department, in the conferences, wherever she goes along with the persona of her, and I meet more than I don't know, I can't count how many students of Madam I meet throughout the year wherever I go, and they all carry, ma'am, your legacy in their own den. So thank you very much for making more people accessible to psychiatry, and they all are there across the country, and helping people to handle their mental stress and trauma and other issues. So thank you very much, ma'am. On behalf of Centaur Pharmaceutical, I would like to say that we would continue to be present and we will continue to meet you. Please continue supporting us, ma'am, and all of you, ma'am. Your presence, your support, your blessings are very, very important to all of us. So please keep supporting us. And I also want to thank all the medical fraternity who has joined here to gather the knowledge. I'm sure they all have gathered a wonderful knowledge, and they will be carrying home a lot of messages from Professor Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, ma'am. And at the end, I would request, please be safe, be healthy. All of you are very important. And I think all of you has made us safe for so long. Please take good care of yourself and make us also safe. Thank you very much, ma'am. Good night.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you, madam. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Arvind, you can make the session live off.